So I need to decide what are those things that are substantial for me, for my personal growth, for my professional growth, and never delegate that into the AI. Because at the very same moment that I start using AI as a crutch to cover for that, I'm waiving forever my capacity to upskill in those areas.
Hi, I'm Johnny Campbell, CEO and co-founder of Social Talent, and welcome to another episode of Hiring Excellence. Today, I'm joined by somebody who I can quite frankly say blew my mind in how they think about AI, learning, the skills we need to develop for the future workplace. This is somebody who literally lives and breathes this with a passion. And I'm excited that you're going to get to spend the next half an hour with him and hearing his ideas. And even if you disagree with him, I think he's going to blow your mind and stretch your view on how we should be prompting, how we should be using AI, how we should be educating our colleagues as well on AI. So I'm pleased to welcome Luciano Pollastri, who's joining us from his home in Madrid today. He is the Global Talent Director at Amadeus. You may not be familiar with Amadeus. You've probably used Amadeus software without knowing it many times a year, and certainly over your life, if you've traveled anywhere in the world, I expect you have. And I'm hoping Luciano might give us a bit of background on the company, his role, before he digs into his personal interest in AI. But Luciano, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thanks for joining us. I know you're a super busy guy. Maybe you might just tell our audience a little bit about your role, your organization, your breadth of responsibility, and then we'll dig into the topic at hand.
Thank you for inviting me. And the first thing you do is having me blushing almost with this introduction. So, okay, I hope I'm going to be up to the expectations right now. But what? So I'm in charge of talent at Amadeus, so the end-to-end talent cycle from recruitment, talent acquisition, learning, internal mobility, leadership development at global level. Amadeus is let's say, the leader in travel tech solutions. So as you said, you don't know you use us most of the time because we are a pure B2B company, but every single person that has been traveling, using an airport, using a hotel, using airplane, has been using Amadeus. Okay, so we're a very innovative company. We have been there for a while. Half of our employees are engineers, software engineers, and we have been we're really a leader in the industry, and we are one of those companies that you use all the time, but you don't know that exists. So that's a little bit both the beauty of it when you were talking talent acquisition and the challenge, because once we present the company, everybody like starts to be like a little bit in awe. But most of the time, we need to do that effort to first reach to the people. And I'm super proud of my company overall, the culture of the company, everything. And yes, I'm beyond that as a person. I love cycling, I love cooking, and I'm totally lost in the generative AI dystopia. Since mainly the first day that it was available for everybody. So available to you now.
So talk to me about your first use of AI. Like, when did you start using it? Was it 3.5 when it launched to the world that you got excited? Were you using before then? What were your first uses? Tell me about your passion for AI and when it was first ignited.
So I was reading a lot just before the public launch of ChatGPT, okay, about the generative AI, what it was doing, the expectations, OpenAI as such. I was not able to access it, but I was ready to break it. I was saying this thing cannot do anything that, like always, is going to be promises and etc. Big fuss, and we're going to go through the next thing, like virtual reality, like many things that were like boom and then went down, right? So the 30th of November 2022, when ChatGPT was open to the public, I entered there with the unique intention to break it and to show to the entire world that it was really bad. Okay. And I remember because I said, look, I'm going to put in there something that I know how to do, right? The first prompt that I put into there was, hey, create a job description for this type of roles that I've been doing like for years and years. And that session with ChatGPT lasted 12 hours. Okay. The
Whoa.
first time that I used it is because I was trying to break it. I was not managing to break it to the extent that it was stupid. Okay, it was really, even if it was not perfect, obviously, I was getting something out of it. Okay, these first prompts were the most damaging 20 seconds to my marriage. Okay, because I entered the rabbit hole immediately, trying to figure out what was happening in there because I had in front of me something that was really of high potential and high quality enough for me to count on it almost immediately. So that's the first contact I got with it, and I started sharing with others, and I started finding other people that were starting to test it and finding the same, and other people rejecting it. Okay, so I went through the phase of trying to find all these monsters, geeks of the AI that were willing to dig the rabbit hole. Okay, and that's a little bit where I started.
So we've come a long way in those couple of years, Luciana, right? So the models have developed. There's more out there, whether it's Grok, whether it's Gemini, Claude, other different models that folks are using. So today, how would you categorize the role of AI or its potential, based on your initial fears, not fears, but your initial desire to break it and prove it was useless? How would you categorize it today in late 2025?
I don't consider anything, both in my personal life or in my professional life, without first consulting the AI partners that I've created or generated. I think I've generated maybe more than 2050 agents by now that I've been configuring, prompting to help me doing certain kind of things. Okay, and it's helping me in different terms to learn, to explore new things, to solve things for me, to brainstorm, to and what I've developed, I will say, is a certain relationship. I don't know how to call it differently, that I've been defining as an operating model for different areas of my life with AI. So I don't consider, I wouldn't project myself doing anything without the contribution of AI in one way or another.
So it sounds like your household's similar to mine, where my wife would ask me a question, what's blah, blah, blah? What should we do? And I go, good question. My phone's out. So, ChatGPT, tell me, blah, 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 blah. And she looks at me and she rolls her eyes to heavens like, oh my God. But, I think I'm like you. Why wouldn't I, use this amazing companion who has such knowledge to bounce ideas off, to fact check information, to source if different things, to put together things for me. It's not always accurate. I was building a presentation yesterday morning and I was prompting and going back and forth, and the AI gave me a perfect flow for the presentation. I said, that looks great. And I went to start writing it, went, nah, this just doesn't work. This is not good enough. But it was brilliant to get me to a point where I could challenge and then come up with my own idea. So I'm not saying I think you are as well. I'm not saying it does everything perfectly, but it can be so useful to help you get to where you need to be as a person. But if you're obviously such an adopter and you use it in so many ways, you built thousands of agents. Why do you think it's so hard for many people to get to where you are, or maybe even where I am, right? A little bit further behind you, let's say. What is that fear for the individual? And then what do you think organizations are so fearful of it? Because I think they are.
Okay, I discovered by sharing my own experience that I faced the same fears than many others were confronting, but I faced them before, so I solved them in my own way. I'll give you an example: the fear of replacement. Okay, that's the main fear. When I put in there the first prompt and asked for a job description, and it gave me part of my job back with a certain degree of quality, I said, this is the worst AI that we will ever have. So it means the potential for replacement is really important, right? So the first level of interaction with the for months, my first level of interaction was almost to try to compete with AI on the output. And that was based on the fear of replacement. I need to do more than what the AI does, right? And I was in permanent competition. It was me versus AI, right? That is one of the first fears that I believe every single person is discovering the first time they use AI, right? There are other type of spheres. For example, from an organizational perspective, it's very important that you use AI in a compliant way, that you don't expose information from the company, confidential information, trade secrets, many things that we have in there. So you have many times like organizations that put in there like the big disclaimer: be careful, you're entering a war zone of AI, you cannot share anything, and etc. So it's also a fear that in organizations we see is happening, is that people do not adopt it because they don't know if they're going to do something wrong,
Mm.
right? There's also the fear of commitment for many people. So by discussing with some people, especially managers, they are required many times to gain productivity or efficiency through AI, and they don't know how to do it. So sometimes they don't know how to commit to something because they don't necessarily know how it works and what it can provide. There are tons the fear of heights of being stupid, because sometimes it delivers you something and you're not sure if it's lying to you or not, it's hallucinating, right? I went through all those phases myself, I think a little bit earlier than most people. And when I'm sharing that, what I see is that most of the people they are blocked in their usage and adoption of AI because of one of those fears. And as each single of us is an individual, it might be another fear. Okay, and each time I discuss with someone else, but at the end, it's based on a fear when there is no adoption and lack of understanding of how it works generally.
Is there a way of shortcutting that, Luciano, or do we all just have to go through that journey of getting over our fears, realizing that this thing isn't in competition with us, it supports us, it can make us better? You know, what is your experience? You know, having spoken to many, I imagine, colleagues who started that journey, have you found a secret way to shortcut that journey?
I don't think it's secret. I think it has to do with basic education on how AI works. For example, if you start telling people, um, explain to them that in reality AI is the generative AI in this case is the most, almost the stupidest thing in the world, is is a predictability model, right? So it's trying to guess what is the next word, most probable word given the instruction that you gave it, okay? And people start understanding how it works, then they start understanding how they can adopt it and how they can be in control of AI, or instead of uh, feeling that they are being controlled by AI. Okay, once you give them, but the only way really to start doing that is to actually start using it.
Hmm.
And that's the main difference, I believe, with AI, is that it changes radically the dynamics with the tool. So in the past, for example, we will train everybody, we will train every person to each single tool, right? So we will standardize human beings for them to fit into tools. And right now, what I'm trying to convey to people is that is the opposite. You need to train the AI tools to fit to you. So all of a sudden, you're at the origin of the training. So you move from trainee to trainer. And once you start thinking that way, then you understand that you're the one that needs to start adopting and giving the AI enough information so it is nurturing you and not the opposite. And once people start really using it, practicing it, and seeing the value, and that they can take control with some basic concepts, okay, then they just break those fears. But the
So we've
only way to do it is really to start explaining to them how it works and to break those fears one by one.
Can you unpack some of those concepts for me? Because I know a lot of people think that the secret to AI is just finding a brilliant list of prompts. Or what, when I deliver sessions on AI to recruiters, they always say, "Can you send me all the prompts you used?" And I'm trying to stress to them, it's not about the prompts I used. I say I made that up on the spot. I don't even know what I said. And it's not, I don't recommend you copy and paste what I wrote. That's not what I'm trying to teach you. What is your approach to this? Because this is not just something that you're not just a passionate AI user. You're responsible for talent development and education in a large, sophisticated organization. And you are a professional in this space in learning and talent development as well. So when you think about how to educate people, is it prompt libraries, or what do you think works the best?
I believe that the killer prompt myth is something that is preventing people from actually developing their AI literacy. The killer prompts, has been designed by someone for themselves. And that's what I was explaining to you. So they have been using AI, and they have been using AI in a way that was for their own context, their own intention, and their own deliverables. So it can help you to see their prompts to try to guess how would be a similar prompt for your own context and environment. But you have been how disappointing it is when you copy paste the prompt from someone else, you don't get the same result, the promised results, right? So what I'm trying to convey, I don't have a killer prompt. I believe that each single of us is the killer prompt. That each single of us needs to define the killer prompt from yourself. And I'm going to share. I don't pretend to have the universal truth. I share my own experience. What I see is helping me to define killer prompts for certain domains have to do with the input that I give to the AI. I was trying to convey before. So the AI is a predictability model that tries to guess the next word given the prompt that you're giving. So it takes the standardized learning model, the standardized data that has been used to train the model to give you an answer. So the only way for you to get something that is going to be customized to you is to overwrite that data
Mm.
with your prompts, right? And what I'm doing is trying to give as much information to the model, so it's going to adapt to me. So in my practice, I divided that in 4 main categories. Okay, the first one has to do with context: who I am, what I do, in what role I'm intervening in. I give everything that I have in my brain that is going to allow the model to put itself in my shoes from my perspective. Perspective is the second one. The AI doesn't have perspective. It doesn't know what is my past, what is my history, what are the stakeholders thinking about the project I am in. So I need to give the AI the exact same history, the exact same experience that I have for it to be adapted to my own needs. Another one has to do with intention. What do I expect from the model in that specific situation? I need to explain very precisely what is the output, the deliverable that I'm going to get through AI, and what is the role that I expect from it versus the role that I'm going to have myself in that project, in that deliverable. And the last one, and that's the I would say the one that is most human, is perception. When you and I we enter a room, we have a past together. Maybe our last conversation didn't go well, or it went really incredible. And that perception is something that the AI doesn't have. So I need to give enough information for it to take into account the emotional aspect of what is going to happen in conversations, in certain projects, and etc. So that's a little bit how I'm trying also to explain to others how I get the most out of AI and how I build my own killer prompts, right? Out of these, I get my own killer prompts for myself, for my own context and environment.
I love that structure. It gives something that can be taught, which is a framework, but it still relies on the flexibility and the perspective of the person and the context, to your point, of what they're trying to do. I have found personally, Luciano, to do this well, typing is just takes too much time for me. I do all this by speaking because I can just have a conversation with the AI verbally in a much better, more fluid way that I can type this information. Would you say that's a factor for you, or have you seen that with others?
So I call it spontaneity. Okay. In myself, I've tried to define what are the skills or capabilities or competencies that are different when you use AI versus when you use or when you deal with people. Okay. And let's call it spontaneity. You need it's crazy to say with the tool, you need to be vulnerable and let it enter into your brain to be the most effective. So what you're saying is that to speak your mind as it comes to your brain is something that I do by writing if I'm right now with you and I cannot speak it directly, but I try to be exactly like that. As the words come to my mind, I just give it that way, very spontaneously, so it can help me exactly how my brain will process it. So I'm in a way delegating and helping it to do the same cognitive process that I'm doing. But if I don't do it spontaneously, I don't give it the detail, I don't do it transparently, there's no way that it's going to help me to the most extent. So I totally agree with what you're saying. And some people are better at being spontaneous verbally, and some people are more able to be spontaneous in writing. So it depends on each single of us. That's why I believe that no killer prompt, no killer way to do things, that etc. My mother, 72 years old, prefers to speak, and it made it super accessible that she doesn't have to type, and she uses AI for many things.
You
I don't
mentioned the
need
word
to make sense.
you mentioned the word delegation,
Yeah.
Luciano, and it reminds me of, you know, technology can be brilliant to support people, but we've read these kind of crazy articles and tragic articles and stories about people, for example, who are using Google Maps and they drive off a mountain, or they crash into a wall because they've become a slave to the technology, saying, well, it's said to do this and this is what I follow. How do you think about, you know, that delegation, that kind of outsourcing of ourselves? When is it the right thing to do, and when do you think it could be harmful?
Um, I've built a model for myself in which I don't delegate or use AI for anything that I don't believe I can produce by myself. What does that mean? I only delegate to AI something that I'm expert enough or I know enough, so I don't waive my capacity to learn that skill. So what we were saying with Google Maps is very interesting. How many people know how to go from one place to another without their phone right now? It's just because we have delegated and outsourced into an app, in this case, the cognitive capacity of orientation. So, and I may not need for my professional development or for my personal growth this capacity or this capability of orientation. So I need to decide what are those things that are substantial for me, for my personal growth, for my professional growth, and never delegate that into the AI. Because at the very same moment that I start using AI as a crutch to cover for that, I'm waiving forever my capacity to upskill in those areas. That's what I experience. I experienced it by presenting things in which I was not expert. The result was wonderful, but as soon as people started scratching the surface of what I was presenting, I was not able to answer to the basic questions. So, and I felt super stupid. So it was like stupidization through AI. By the way, there's already some research and consistent research that is showing that if you're using AI for things that you don't have a certain level of knowledge or expertise, then your output might be good on the short term, but on the long term, you're not able to sustain that delivery. And on top of it, you don't build anything in yourself.
Now,
So you become more and more dependent on AI, so you become more and more replaceable by AI, because in your operating model, AI takes more place than you do as a human being.
this reminds me, Luciano, of something that I've had throughout my career. I present a lot in conferences and so on and so forth to customers. And I once presented somebody else's presentation deck. And I said I'd never do it again because I couldn't understand. It was a good deck, but I didn't write it. I wasn't involved in the thinking about why that slide was there, why these bullet points, why these images. And to your point, if somebody's asked me a question to dig deeper, a layer, I couldn't explain it because I was literally just presenting somebody else's ideas and order and creation. And I think curiosity plays a role here, because how I've used, you know, AI is I might ask a question about an area I don't understand and get an answer. And I won't take the answer verbatim. I'll start going, why? How did that happen? When was this? What happened before that? Until I have enough of an understanding about the core knowledge that I have to then say, great, now I'll use it or not use it, depending on that. Um, do you think, though, I'd say in a professional environment, we're hearing a lot around how roles will be replaced. We'll get AI to do X, Y, Z, because people are perhaps going to say, well, it can code, so let's give it the coding. It can write, so let's give it the writing, etc., etc. Um, what's the danger in that? And then why would you not want that to be the situation where you just, give a whole lot of tasks to AI without necessarily considering how it's doing these things? And then how do you make sure that you're creating a culture where AI is supportive, but you're not outsourcing and giving the risk of, well, nobody understands now what the AI is doing. We have a process that we outsourced. We don't really understand how it's working, how it's getting those results. It may for the moment work, but there's massive risk in there.
So from an individual perspective, it's complementary to what I just told you. I need to be in control of what I delegate to AI versus what I don't delegate to AI. So I make a real choice of the things that I need for my future and the ones that I do not need. And the capacity that I have to generate things through AI have to do also with my experience. So I'm able to connect the dots, for example, in my area, because I've been doing that. It's not a question of age, it's the question of what you've been doing in the past, right? So I've been building up experience, doing thousands of job descriptions by myself, advising tons of people on career, defining competency frameworks, doing competency-based interviews, etc. And that helps me to connect the dots of AI, giving context to AI that has the universal knowledge, to give it the universal context. Okay, so the the danger from an organizational perspective is if you delegate all those tasks of creating the job descriptions, generating the structure of the competency-based interviews, etc., is that the early careers, the person that are accessing the job market, they're not going to have that opportunity to practice that and to build their own experience. So in a way, and that's the paradigm here with the AI, is that is one of the first times that the tech tool, is in a way replacing the entry level and not creating that a pre-retirement for the people that are not adapted to the tech. So I believe that as an organization, need to make sure that I create a space for early careers to continue experimenting, for to continue learning, to build up that experience that are going to make them the ones that are going to use AI because they know what they're doing with it. Because we know that AI hallucinates, is wrong, is going to be extremely plausible and believable in inventing something. So if you don't control a little bit what you are doing, if you're not knowledgeable about that side, if you don't have the experience, you're not going to be able to filter that. And that's the danger overall, is that we don't help the people to build up that experience to be in control of AI.
It reminded me when we first spoke about this, Luciano, of baking. I regularly ask AI for recipes for muffins, for cakes, for different things to make for the family. I don't like to buy processed food, so I like to buy, you make things at home. And what I realized was that if you just do that, you miss the understanding. And I try and share this with my kids when we're baking. It's not just putting the ingredients in a bowl. The why is important. Why is an egg in a cake mixture? It's there to bind. And are there other things you could use as a binding agent instead of an egg? Yes, there are. Why would you use cold water and not warm water? Why do you leave things to set? Again, if you just follow the instructions, you may get to the same result, but what you miss is the opportunity to learn about how it comes together. Because if there's a deviation, a change, you're missing an ingredient, you're stuck and you cannot move forward. I think that, that analogy transfers over to the workplace where AI just does it, but one day something, which inevitably is going to happen, comes in to change the process, or we're missing something. Well, nobody knows what to do because we just relied on AI to do the instructions. You shared with me a great story about a colleague who pointed out to you this risk of not enabling her to learn the basics. Would you mind sharing that with us?
Yes, so I felt extremely smart and proud of the fact that I generated the competency framework almost in 2 hours with one of the agents that I've created. So I uploaded to the agent a former competency framework. I put in there what are the success profiles for the future, what we are expecting from the people. I was able to generate some reference job descriptions that I would like to follow the concept, the theory, etc. I uploaded our talent review framework, conferry competencies on the side, many things together. And then in 1 hour and a half, I was able to really make something that was quite consistent from a new competency framework. And I was very proud presenting to some people in my team, and one person pointed out that, like, almost disappointed, that thank you very much for having done the work that would have helped me building up skills, because you have been doing competency frameworks for years, but in a career you have the possibility to make competency frameworks from the scratch maybe twice or 3 times in your career, and you just take one opportunity out of me. So I felt miserable as a manager, as a leader, not to be able to identify. I was going there very proud. And it
Mm.
pointed that the fact that I was in a bit, I'm going to use I'm not a psychologist at all, but someone told me you were castrating them. You were preventing them from building up what you built. So it was both selfish to see it in that way. It was non-empathetic, and And it made me learn a lot. It made me learn that I need to help people in my team to contribute, because then I made them feel that they were replaceable, and they are not. Especially that lady there is by no means replaceable in my team. She has something that is unique, and I want her to cultivate that. And I was trying to show her that she can automate some things in order to cultivate that uniqueness that she has, because she's really good. And through my practice of AI, I gave her the exact opposite message. So it totally changed my way of seeing how I organize myself with AI versus what I give to the team with AI, and trying to, I would not say help them, but have them conscious that they need to build their own operating model too, and allow them to build that experience. That's what you were referring to, right? That
Very
example.
much so. Very much so. And it brings me to probably one of our near closing questions, Luciano. Considering that, it's a great example. What do you think are some of the most interesting uh, use cases, potential use cases, or existing use cases of AI in HR, talent, recruiting, learning that you've seen or you're exploring, that we should be using AI in?
I'm going to give you the experience over the last 2 months that is most interesting. And one moment where I say I would never have picked this if it wasn't because AI is covering for part of the work. So we are using Copilot to transcribe the interviews, what has been said in interviews, especially at executive level. I ask for authorization; it's very transparent, etc. But it allows me to only be focusing on the most human part of the recruitment process. So especially when we are like this, I'll give you an example. AI will take for granted whatever the candidate is saying. It's going to take the example and it's going to say, hey, the candidate has provided evidence that he's a very good communicator because he has been in so many conferences, gave examples of conferences, the impact of the conferences, and he's a very, very enthusiastic communicator. In front of me, I had this person that was communicating that way. So even if he was giving incredible examples of being, so you, he was not an enthusiastic communicator. He was not someone inspiring. So this part of the perception that I wouldn't have been able to get it. This one is very obvious, okay? But I wouldn't have been able to be totally focusing on that part. And if I count on AI, I'm totally driven to another place. I'm going to give you another one. Very senior executive recruitment. I had this former McKinsey consultant, and I've been trained a little bit on how they solve issues on data, and it's very good because they're really well structured and etc. But each time I was asking a question, it was taking 10, 15 seconds to have in his mind the process of doing a Merlin approach. So he would just reverse engineer the outcome that he wanted to convey to me to the initial answer that he was going to, the where he would start the answer. In the past, because I would be noting the answer for the last question, I would miss that it's taking these 10 seconds to think about it. And at this very moment, while I was here and I was not noting, because I knew that the AI was there to support me in the background, I didn't need to go to be worried about that. I asked him, tell me, I need to understand what is going in your brain right now. I know that you're reverse engineering because I know what is your methodology. I'm really interested to understand how you structure that thought process into that. And he gave me like the most amazing 10 minutes of the interview in that moment that I would have missed if I was noting the answer for the previous question, or I was noting my interpretation of what has been done in that. And the dynamic was like this. It allowed me to make a decision on this person that I wouldn't have gotten without the AI. And that's because I have attributed to AI to cover for some things that are freeing time for me to focus on the most human part, the thing that it cannot do. And that's my main lesson of my practice of AI over the years is I stopped competing with AI. I'm trying to avoid that conceptually we're intervening in the same space. It intervenes in one thing, and I intervene in another thing that is completely different from a conceptual perspective. So we never enter into competition. I bring things on top of AI because the equation me plus AI is superior to AI if me is a positive value, right? The only way that is inferior to AI is if I'm a negative value or I'm competing. That's my main obsession when I'm conveying to people how to use AI, or how I found the solution to myself feeling super comfortable that I'm going to be more productive, more innovative, I'm going to upskill. Is that combination of me plus AI is always more important than AI by itself.
I love that. We, as you probably know, launched an interview intelligence product this month to do that for organizations and bring that productivity. I use AI to record nearly every conversation I have because I can focus, and afterwards I can ask it, what did I commit to? What are my follow-ups? Give me the summary, and it just makes me so much better. To your point, I'm good at asking questions and having conversations. AI is brilliant at taking notes and doing all that work for me and summarizing stuff. So it's, again, the two of you together and not competing. Final question, Luciano, and thank you so much for your time today. But if you're to sum up, as you see it going forward, what do you think is the role AI is going to play in the future of work that excites you?
AI has helped me over the last year to have more human interactions, to be present in more exchanges like this one with you now, to be invited into conferences about innovation, about things that I would not have access to if it wasn't because I'm freeing up time for the quality things.
Hmm.
So these that's what I believe in the future, is that when people start to manage in AI in a way that is for them, then it opens up so many opportunities in the exchange, in the socialization, in the innovation. And I believe that productivity, which is the first part, is what I'm delegating to AI, is not exclusive with innovation, with humanization, and that's the future for me, is how each single of us define our individual operating model with AI, so it enables you to reach new skills, to learn new things. Because if in the past there was something missing, it was time enough to learn everything I want to learn. And right now it's offering that possibility. Targeted learning, customized learning, uh, uh, exchanges with people that are from different areas just because of that. And each single person right now, I think, it should be sitting and just saying, hey, I'm going to become the manager of artificial resources and people resources. And it requires some different ways of working with artificial resources. The same way that we define what a people manager is, we need to define what an artificial resource manager is, and we're in that process. And it's so exciting. We're in a moment that is so exciting from a people perspective. That's yeah, I'm really optimistic about it.
I love that. It reminds me of, I once read a book that talked about, over the years, over the centuries, the amount of human hours that went into an hour of light. And, centuries ago, you were having to literally kill a whale, take the whale oil out, put that in a kerosene in a lamp, then use that to light. And you would spend, most of the day trying to get the energy for 1 or 2 hours of light. But we developed new technologies that reduced the amount of human effort that was necessary to produce an hour of light to almost nothing. And that allowed us to then free up our time to do all the wonderful things we've done since then. I think that is the way of thinking about AI, is saying, what are we not doing as a society, as humans today, that we could be spending our time on if we were freed up to be more productive, to do what we do today. I think people too often, as your point made there, Luciano, see just what we do today and say, well, if AI can do lots of that, what will we do? 100 years ago, we found new things to do. I think we'll find plenty of new things to do that will progress humanity and make us all happier in the next 100 years. Luciano, thank you so much for joining us, for sharing your wisdom. It's been an absolute pleasure to have you here today. I will hopefully have you back
Thank
on
you very
again
much
soon.
for inviting me. See you soon.
No, not at all. And thank you for joining us today and sharing, hopefully, that excitement about AI and its potential. Hope you've learned something for you, for your organization, how to think about deploying AI, learning about AI, what works, what doesn't work, and the passion that hopefully, hopefully you get Luciano's passion and can bring some of that to your business. We'll be back again next week with an episode of Hiring Excellence. Until then, take care.